The truth doesn't matter. We turn from the truth. And they're perverting absolutely everything. But there is good news. There is really good news. We are actually seeing resurgence in a new book about Jesus. It's number 2 on Amazon.com last I checked. And that's great, right? Why did I read about that book today? How is a book about Jesus actually making it, how's it making the rounds all of a sudden? And the reason why it's number 2 on Amazon is because it's everywhere. It's on all of the media. How? All of a sudden they love a book about Jesus. That's puzzling. We'll talk about it next. Okay, but here's the good news. There's a new book about Jesus getting major media attention. Everybody's talking about. Only problem is the book Zealot attempts to change who Jesus really was. Cast him as, quote, a violent revolutionary, fanatical ideologue, and an odd and scary and extraordinarily interesting man. That's the way I would describe Jesus Christ. Interviews on MSNBC, The Huffington Post, The Daily Show, NPR. I mean, when did they suddenly become interested in Jesus? Book is currently number 6 on Amazon bestsellers. It spiked to number 2. But what the media has not bothered to tell you and to point out is that the life and times of Jesus is not written by a religious scholar, as often claimed. It's written by this guy. This guy is, boy, he's a handsome, rugged Middle Eastern guy, right? Yeah, he's a devout Muslim. He's not even a trained historian. So it shouldn't come as a surprise that a devout Muslim would come to the conclusion that Jesus is not really the Son of Man, and that the Christian Gospels aren't really the truth. I don't know if you can trust them. Those are the standard Islamic claims that go back hundreds of years. But the media has failed to disclose that little tidbit of information because it's probably not really important. It'd be like Franklin Graham writing a shocking tell-all book about Muhammad. Would anybody take it seriously? Would anybody think that maybe we should point out that that's the son of Billy Graham? We're polluting our system, and this time with Muslim propaganda. And why is the media trying to sneak it by you? Because we're in bed with all things that are Muslim, and we stand against all things that are Christian. Tonight, the truth about the author of this book and why the rest of the media will not point the truth out. Well, hello, American. Welcome to the Glenn Beck program and to The Blaze. This is the network that you are building, and it is important that we build it because there's a problem with truth. And there's a problem with truth in the media, and we're all following the media like zombies. And it's true, you know it is, because why isn't America, I was out in California, gas is $4.11 out there. Why is nobody talking about that? Because the media isn't talking about it. We follow the media, and this book is evidence. The media is hyping this book about Jesus. And whenever the media decides, we got to tell you about this book about Jesus, it's fairly safe to assume that it's not going to make Jesus look really good. I saw this book while I was out. I've been gone, I think, for 5 weeks now. And I saw it popping up everywhere. And I knew something was up. And I called the studio and I called the staff. And I said, do me a favor, look into this book. And most importantly, tell me who this man is. Who's the author? Well, NPR was billing this as Christ in context. Woo, NPR says that? The Seattle Times wrote, Zealot looks at the age of Jesus that he lived in to expand what's known about this historic figure, really. And Publishers Weekly named it one of their best new books. It's got to be good. Generally, it is positive all the way around with anybody in the media. No controversial language attached to it whatsoever, as is the case whenever I or pretty much any conservative appears on mainstream media outlets and we mention Jesus. Not surprisingly, the book has ended up to be just another attack on Christian beliefs. And yet no one in the media or the administration is condemning it, which I thought was weird, because I know if I condemn or write a bad book about, let's say, the Prophet Muhammad, Well, then I'm going to be responsible for the Benghazi attacks. Right? I mean, remember the horrible, evil video questioning Mohammed? It was denounced by Hillary Clinton. It was denounced by President Obama. I guess we just have to go shoot up an embassy to get some attention here, but that's not what Christians do. But I thought that they were against any denigration of any religious figure. I mean, the president, I guess he was a little more clear when he went in front of the UN. What exactly did he say?
The future must not belong to those who slander the prophet of Islam.
Ah, that's it. That's it. Future can't go to the people who slander the prophet of Islam. The man who made the video slandering, and it was an awful video, went to jail. This guy? The guy who slanders Jesus? Is he going to be condemned? No. They're giving him cover. You see, it started out strangely. Initially, the media failed to point out that the author, Reza Aslan, was a Muslim. Now, I want to be really clear here. I don't really care. A Muslim has every right to write a book about Jesus. You don't like Jesus, you like Jesus. You're a Muslim, you're a Hindu, you're a Christian. I don't really care. But it should be pointed out. And this is the same thing. Christian has a right to do a book about Mohammed. Or a video. Freedom of speech. But I don't think everybody agrees on that one. And the important thing is if I'm writing a book about Mohammed, everybody should say, full disclosure, he's a Christian. Same thing with this guy. Full disclosure, he doesn't like Christianity. He's a Muslim. But the media and the author were hiding it at the beginning for some reason. Now, there was an interview early on with NPR, and here's what he said.
Are you still a Christian?
No, I wouldn't call myself a Christian because I do not believe that Jesus is God, nor do I believe that he ever thought that he was God, or that he ever said that he was God.
What?
But I am a follower of Jesus, and I think that sometimes, unfortunately, I think even Christians would recognize this and admit it, those two things aren't always the same, being a Christian and being a follower of Jesus.
Yeah, right. This guy's absolutely brilliant. You have to, hats off. He's brilliant. He is. Are you a Christian? No, but I am a follower of Jesus. I think I'd call myself that. Really? No mention here that he's a Muslim. Who holds the view that Jesus Christ is not the Son of God. He does say Jesus is the Son of God. Now, again, the fact that Aslan is a Muslim doesn't matter to the story. In fact, that's the red herring. The reason why I bring this up is the fact that they're dishonest about it. That's what matters. Because, as it turns out, he's being dishonest not about the Islam thing. He is not forthcoming about a lot of things. Himself, Jesus, and most tellingly, the associations that reveal his real motivations behind writing the book. Zealot. What is it? It is the latest progressive attempt to change and rewrite history. That's what it is. And that's the #1 priority now for progressives. From naming streets after communist labor activist Cesar Chavez, to making movies glorifying the murderous revolutionary Che, progressives are trying to cement the legacy of the radical revolutionary and the leftist. And that's what they're trying to make Jesus into. He was just a radical. He was just a revolutionary. He was just like Che. And if you believe anything else, you're into the dustbin of history. That's what they're doing. And the scary part is, it's working because no one is exposing it. Tonight, we're going to do just that. And it's up to you then to carry the water and spread this around to all of your friends. We're going to show you the truth behind this author that he and no other media source has even bothered to point out. And when we do, they'll say, oh, there he goes with the chalkboard and the conspiracies. Nope. It's all out in the open. Didn't take us long to find it. You can find it yourself. Don't take my word for it. Do your own homework. Get to the truth about, well, why? Why? Why is this guy doing it? Well, he's just a scholar, right? He's a scholar. He's got a passion for this. That's what he'll have you believe. When you dig down, people will say, no, 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 it's because of his faith. No, it's not about that. So that leaves, he wants fame, he wants money, or he wants power. To find out why he's doing this, you have to begin to uncover the many falsehoods surrounding this book and the author. Let's start with the first dishonest claim. He's a religious scholar and a historian. In fact, I'm quoting him, he has a PhD in the history of religions. That's how everyone is identifying him, because that's how he identifies himself. In fact, he gets a little snotty about it. In an interview on Fox News, he declared himself a historian and a PhD on the history of religions. Well, let's look at this and see how the facts compare. Can you please play the history of religions, or we have that coming up later? Because I know he has 4 degrees. He has, in 1995, he got a BA in religion, in religious studies. A BA, that's not a PhD. Santa Clara University. 1999, Masters in World Religions from Harvard. Okay. Good. Not a PhD. In 2002, a Master's in Fine Arts in Fiction. Interesting. In the University of Iowa. In 2009, a PhD in Sociology. That is bizarre. So he's studying us. He's learning how to write fiction, and he learns how to speak the religious language. Wow. It's a fascinating work here. But you know what I notice? There's no history degree. There's no history degree. He's not a PhD in religions, and he's not a historian. It's possible that his Harvard theology degree included some history credits, but that's not the same, and not even on the same planet as an expert with a PhD in the history of religions. Please play the Fox News piece here where he goes on. Listen to how he says it.
To be clear, I am a scholar of religions with 4 degrees, including 1 in the New Testament. I am an expert with a PhD in the history of religions. I am a professor of religion, including the New Testament. That's what I do for a living, actually. To be clear, I just want to emphasize this one more time. I am a historian. I am a PhD in the history of religions.
No, he's not. He's not a PhD of the history of religions. He is not a historian. I tell you what, next time I'm on any channel, I'm going to insist that they put historian underneath my name. I spend a lot of time looking at history. A lot of time. Do you think they'd let me get away with historian? How about if I said I was a PhD in American history, and I don't have that? Would anybody allow me to get away with it? A cursory glance at his book reveals serious flaws in both fact and logic. But before I leave there, could you please put up where he's teaching now? Because he said, I want you to know what I'm teaching here. This is what I do. I'm a professor of history specializing in the Gospels. No, actually, he's at UC Riverside, and he's in the Department of Creative Writing. Really? He also is, he's at the University of Southern California in public diplomacy, which is an interesting place for him to be. He's also a contributor for the Daily Beast. But my favorite is the last one. We put this up. He's a sometimes professor. Sometimes professor. And Tiffany, if you can please find that for me. He's a sometimes professor, and what he's doing is he's teaching people something fantastic. He's teaching people Middle Eastern revolution. That's what he's a professor of. Revolution through, go ahead, here it is. Revolution on the art of protest in the Middle East, examining protest literature, film, art, and music. There it is. Drew University. That's not the same, is it? Now, his education started as most education does. He was a Christian before going into college, and colleges are doing a great job churning people out that are not Christians anymore. It's there that his professors started teaching him.
Became very angry. I became very resentful. I turned away from Christianity, began to really reject the concept of Christ.
Interesting. So it's not surprising to me that the elitist godless professors sway him away from Jesus, but that's his starting point. Anger, resentment, rejection. But he stays in school. He gets his several degrees. For a religious expert, he doesn't seem to have a grasp on even the most basic facts. But he's busy teaching revolution in the Middle East. So, now, Aslan was deflecting the NPR question of his own religious views, but he also blatantly lied about the point in the Gospels. Go back to the NPR piece here where he made this claim in the interview. Watch this.
I do not believe that Jesus is God, nor do I believe that he ever thought that he was God, or that he ever said that he was God.
Okay. Got a problem with this one, because Jesus made it very clear that he was. He was either God, the Son of God, or the Messiah. He's in the God circle there. And I don't care how far you get away from it. If you read the Gospels, it's pretty clear that's who he's saying he is. It's one of the reasons why everybody wanted him dead. He refers to himself as I am, which is the holy name of God, at least 4 times. In Mark, Jesus is asked, are you the Son of God? And he says, yes. Well, that seems like it's pretty clear. So why would a religious scholar make such an easily disprovable claim? The string of dishonesty seems to be a pattern here. Judging his work on his merit, judging him just forget about everything about that he lied about his PhD, he lied about what he does for a living, what he's currently teaching, that he's a professor of. Let's just judge him just based on the book, Zealot. We showed you the one disputed claim. Here's another one. He wrote in the Washington Post that the Gospels are not, nor were they ever meant to be, a historical documentation of the life of Jesus Christ. He said these are just eyewitness accounts of Jesus' words and deeds. They're really not. They're testimonies of faith composed by communities of faith, written many, many, many years later after they describe. Okay. This claim is flat out false. Let's go to the Gospel of Luke. Luke says, insomuch as I have undertaken to compile a narrative of the things which have been accomplished among us, just as they were delivered to us by those from the beginning, were eyewitnesses and ministers of the word. It seemed good to me also, having followed all things closely for some times past, to write an orderly account for you, most excellent Theophilus, that you might know the truth concerning the things which you have been informed. Now, that's what it actually says, so I don't know how you can say that it wasn't, it was just a thing on faith. Oh, I remember. He said, because this was written a long time, sometimes 30, 40 years after, right? And so the authors weren't reliable because it was 40 years after his death and after it happened. Well, that seems to be a logical problem here, Professor. How are we supposed to take your book seriously 2,000 years later if 40 years couldn't get it right? If you need more evidence, read the book. I'm not a book burner. I'm not somebody, you read the book. It's garbage. We wanted to give you a taste here. We wanted to establish the clear pattern of dishonesty. But why is the real question? Why? What is the reason behind it? That's what we try to do on this show. We go back to that one question. Why? Well, to answer why, you have to look at who he really is. Who is he? He's not who the media says he is, and he's not who the detractors say he is. The media says he's a God professor of gospel history. No, he's not. He's got a PhD in gospel history. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. That it's not who his detractors say. He's a Muslim. No, he's not. He is a Muslim, but that's not what his motivation is. It begins with Aslan Media. Now, why would this guy who's so focused on God and religion, because that's what he is, he's a professor, why does he have Aslan Media? Go back to what he's teaching. What is he teaching sometimes at Drew? He's teaching the art of revolution and protest through literature and music. That's what he's doing. So he's producing literature and media. Now, who is Aslan Media? Well, they're operating under the fiscal sponsorship of this group, the Levantine Cultural Center. Well, who are they? Well, they're easy to figure out. They're partners with Code Pink on the founding committee of a project called Narrative 4. What's Narrative 4? Well, that's a project dedicated to creating social change, and that's a project of the Tide Center. This is starting to look familiar, isn't it? He's also a board member on the National Iranian American Council. Now, who are they? Well, they're funded by George Soros. He's also on the board of directors of this is great, Let's Take Our Plowshares. Take our swords and pound them into plowshares. So the Plowshares Fund, which is launched with money from the Tides Foundation. Now, Tides funnels money to the Plowshares, and now the Plowshares sends it back to Tides, and they can fund other progressive groups like Media Matters. Plowshares also has helped fund the launch of the Center for American Progress. Plowshares also donates heavily to the International Crisis Group. Isn't that great? Oh, that's Samantha Power. Which brings us back to the International Crisis Group, the responsibility to protect the Gaza flotilla. Remember when Code Pink was there? It's funny. It's funny that all he wants to do is talk to you about Jesus. Does he now? Whenever somebody wants to change history, it usually comes back, when you really look into it, to the same cast of characters. Unless they're being demonized. If they're being demonized by the mainstream media, you know none of these people are involved. If they're being hailed as a god, you know the ends justify the means, progressives are back. You know, the ones who believe it's okay to lie as long as in the end the result is the one that you desire. So forget about this guy being a phony Muslim or a phony scholar. Who is he? He's a radical progressive. He is also hardcore anti-Israel. The 2010 flotilla, remember Code Pink? Yeah. He said about this particular point in history in the world, he said, at what point are rational, peace-loving, Israel-supporting people of the world going to stand up and say, enough? How much longer are we to bear the Hezbollah propaganda? That's an interesting phrase. That places the image of the state of Israel above its well-being. See, he knows what's better for Israel than Israel does. I've heard that before. I think the president said it. How much longer are we going to accept the cries of victimization from the strongest, and get this, richest nation in the Middle East? It's no longer Saudi Arabia, it's Israel. To this historian and PhD in the histories of religion. How much longer are we going to put up with a policy of collective punishments that has led up to the slow starvation of 1.5 million people? He also is mainstream, at least with the mainstream media and this administration and with George Soros and with the Tides Foundation. He thinks the Muslim Brotherhood is wonderful. Quote, on the Muslim Brotherhood, make no mistake, however current uprising in Egypt turns out, there can be no doubt that the Muslim Brotherhood will have a significant role to play in post-Mubarak Egypt, and that is a good thing. In an interview on the Muslim Brotherhood website, he said, quote, I decided to study religion in school even though I planned on being a writer because of my experience at Santa Clara University, a Jesuit university steeped in the promotion, you can hear it coming, can't you, of social justice. The Jesuits taught me whatever I did for a living, it must benefit society. It must be for the greater good. And I must work towards justice and peace. Justice and peace. He said these words very carefully to the Muslim Brotherhood's official English language. Why? Well, I think Americans really need to understand the Muslim Brotherhood is the Freedom and Justice Party. But how does freedom and justice come about with Muslim Brotherhood? They believe, according to their own websites, the only way to achieve freedom and justice is with Sharia law. See, this guy is very good at speaking two languages at once. He's a media guy. He's a media guy. He's a radical. There's a difference between the Catholic understanding of social justice and the Muslim Brotherhood understanding of social justice and freedom. Even a difference between the George Bernard Shaw social justice. I mean, he told us, why bother keeping somebody alive if there's nobody, that's benefiting from their life in society? There's a difference. Even the Catholic version of social justice, which I'm sure he doesn't really even understand, that if there's one God, he sorts things out. And that one God, why would he let his son be crucified? Why would he let his son, Catholics believe this, why would he be crucified? To set the example. There's a difference between man's justice and God's justice. But see, he seemed to miss that in his Catholic education. Make no mistake, it's not because he is a Muslim. He's not writing a book slamming Jesus because of his Muslim beliefs. He's not writing it because he's an amazing historian and has uncovered some incredible new facts that the world has to hear. Make no mistake. He is a progressive radical. Above all else, he wants to change our understanding of history and our relationship to God to create social change. That's what he's teaching at Drew University. I mean, at least when he's a visiting professor occasionally at Drew University, the class has chosen, they know what they're walking into, to witness the art of protest in literature, film, art, and music. What he is currently doing, he's acting it out. His goal is to cause doubt in believers of Jesus and ultimately have them leave their faith like he did, so progressives will have more devoted followers who can do whatever their heart's desire tells them to do. Change our history, change our traditions. That's what this is really all about. And the good news is for Reza, bad news for us, he's not trying to do this alone.
And Barack knows that we are going to have to make sacrifices. We are going to have to change our conversation. We're going to have to change our traditions, our history. We're going to have to move into a different place as a nation to provide the kind of future that we all want desperately for our children.
Okay, I want to tell you a little bit about the author of this new book, and this we're going to put out, and nobody else is going to pick it up. I would hope that Fox would pick all of this stuff up, but I'm not sure. I think they took their swing at this guy. And it is important, this book that is Publishers Weekly says it's the pick of the month or the week or whatever it is. USA Today is heralding this thing. Everybody is saying it's just a great work on Jesus. NPR is pushing it, and it is rising up the charts. A new historic look at the man, Jesus. Now, the media has gotten lost. I shouldn't say this. The right has gotten lost by saying this guy's just a Muslim. It's much deeper than just a Muslim. If a Muslim wants to write something about Jesus, fine, he can write something about Jesus. I would like the same ability to be able to have Christians write something about Muhammad and not be killed.
And people who do this with Jesus always stand behind the whole theory that, oh, well, I've said he was a good guy. I said he was a prophet. Yeah, that still diminishes everything we believe about him as the Son of God, as deity. When you diminish that, when you take that aspect away, Christianity falls apart, and that's what people forget.
Right. He becomes Gandhi.
Yeah.
And he wasn't Gandhi.
No.
But here's the thing. It's okay for somebody to say that, but let's just be honest about everything.
Right.
Okay?
And stop trying to hide behind, this is a good thing that I'm saying about him. No, it's not. No, it's not.
So here is the author of Zealot on Fox News last weekend.
Well, this is an interesting book. Now, I want to clarify, you're a Muslim, so why did you write a book about the founder of Christianity?
Well, to be clear, I am a scholar of religions with 4 degrees, including one in the New Testament and fluency in biblical Greek.
Again, not true.
No. Let him speak.
Who
here.
has been studying the origins of Christianity for 2 decades, who also just happens to be a Muslim. So it's not that I'm just some Muslim writing about Jesus. I am an expert with a PhD in the history of religions. But I have been obsessed with Jesus.
Though, it still begs the question, why would you be interested in the founder of Christianity?
Because it's my job as an academic. I am a professor of religion, including the New Testament.
Really?
That's what I do for a living, actually. So, I mean, it would be like asking a Christian why they would write a book about, Islam. I'm not sure about that. But honestly, I've been obsessed with Jesus for really 20 years.
I bet he has. Okay, so here's what you need to know, and I want to make sure that you heard that, and there's much more where he repeats it over and over and over again, and he becomes hostile. I am a history professor. I am a professor of the history of religions. I am a historian. I have a PhD in the history of religions. I have a degree in the New Testament. Got it? Those are his words. And that's how everyone has identified him and allowed him to say unchallenged, even on Fox, unchallenged. Here's who he really is. He does have 4 degrees because he says, I have 4 degrees. He does. He has 4 degrees. In 1995, he got a BA in religion from Santa Clara University. In 1999, he got a master's in world religion from Harvard. In 2002, he has a master's in fine arts in fiction from the University of Iowa. In 2009, he got his PhD in sociology. Very important to remember. A PhD, the only doctorate he holds is a PhD in sociology from the University of California, Santa Barbara. So, I don't see the PhD in the history of religion. I don't see his degree in the New Testament, although maybe a master's in world religions from Harvard would do it, or a BA in religion from Santa Clara might be considered that. But he is not a professor of religion. He is not teaching that for a living. He is not a historian. He doesn't have a history degree. Where's your history degree? And where is he teaching now? He is currently teaching, he's an associate professor of creative writing at the University of California, Riverside. He's a creative writing professor. He's not a historian. He is not, as he says, I'm a professor of religion. That's what I do for a living. No, what you do for a living is you teach creative writing in the University of California. He is also a research associate for the University of Southern California on public diplomacy. That has nothing to do at all with religion. He is a contributing editor for the Daily Beast. And he is also a visiting professor, and this one's really important because, remember, I said his doctorate is in sociology. He's a visiting professor at Drew University, where he occasionally teaches. He teaches a class on the art of protest in the Middle East. Now, what is that? He is specifically looking at protest literature, film, art, and music. So he is looking at how do you get people into the streets to protest by using literature, art, and music. That's what he's teaching. And that's exactly what he's done with his creative writing on Jesus. Now, that's quite a statement to make, but I can back it up. First of all, do your own homework. Press, do your own homework. Those are his degrees. So we have him as a proven liar. So now why is he doing it? That's the next question. I've drawn my conclusions, but why did I draw them? Some people are saying that he's a Muslim. He's just trying to discredit Christianity. No, that's too narrow of a view. It's not his Muslim thing that is driving him. He says when he first got into school, he went to school with the Jesuits, and he said he was a Christian. And then what the Jesuits taught him about Jesus, when he realized Jesus is a fraud, he was angry and bitter and full of resentment. That's what he said. And so he built from there. He later found Islam. But he found his entryway, because that's what he's looking for. Remember, he starts with religion because he's really probably truly searching for some stuff. He starts with religion, but then as he finds that religion is just a sham, Christianity is a sham, starts to hate America and everything else, then he starts to think, well, you know what, I could do a lot if I had a creative writing degree. And so he gets his creative writing degree. But I really need a PhD in sociology. I need to know how systems work, how people work, what makes them tick. How can you steer people? Very, very Cass Sunstein. So who is he? Well, he is the founder of Aslan Media Initiatives. Now, do you know a lot of people who are PhD in the history of religions, which he's not, and who is just a history professor who also has his own media corporation? Media Initiatives. Now, they're operating under the fiscal sponsorship, and this is really important. What does that mean? Well, he's not fiscally responsible for this. Somebody else is pouring money into his company. And who is doing it? The Levantine Cultural Center. Now, who's the Levantine Cultural Center? Well, I can tell you the easy thing. They're partners with Code Pink, so we know that they're extreme leftists. But what does Levantine mean? This is what I said in a meeting yesterday when I found out that he's being sponsored financially, fiscal sponsorship, by the Levantine Cultural Center. I said, guys, does anybody in the room know what Levantine means? What is that? Nobody raised their hand. I said, you find out, because that is key. That will say who he really is. Well, here's the history of Levantine. The term evolved in the 20th century from applying to a European-born and living in the Eastern Mediterranean. It came to include either an Eastern Christian or another member of a non-Arab minority, now listen carefully, whose business dealings were ethically tainted to the point of implementing the profit motive even while on vacation. The metamorphosis of the term probably reflected a change in the attitudes of Europeans towards the East. By the end of the 19th century, European Arabists believed that the Eastern civilization was purer, was more spiritual, and more wholesome than Western civilization, and the European greed and viciousness were destroying the Arab East. To such Europeans, Levantines were the carriers of the Western and European greed and viciousness, since it was through them, the Christian brothers of the Europeans, and to a lesser extent the Jews, that it flowed into Eastern and Arab society. So the people who are sponsoring him have named their group, their cultural center, after a term that means the West is tainted and dirty and destroying the Middle East. Christians and Jews in particular. Remember, Code Pink was the group that also was on the flotilla, which had exactly the same kind of idea, that Jews are tainting and destroying and killing everybody in the Middle East. He is also on the founding committee of a project called Narrative 4. What is Narrative 4? Narrative 4 is a project dedicated to creating social change. Remember the word narrative, meaning storyline. He has studied religion 20 years ago, and then he got into creative writing, the narrative, and then he started studying sociology. How do you move people? Founding member of Narrative 4, creating social change. Who's doing this? This is a project of the Tides Foundation. He's a board member of the National Iranian American Council, which is funded by George Soros. He is also on the board of directors of the Plowshares Fund. What is Plowshares? Take our swords and pound them into plowshares. Plowshares was launched with funds from, say it with me, the Tides Foundation. Tides now funnels money back to Plowshares, who then sends it around to other progressive groups like Media Matters. Plowshares also helped fund the launch of the Center for American Progress. And the Plowshares Fund also donates heavily to the International Crisis Group, that is Samantha Power's old stomping ground. So you know exactly who this guy is. Don't listen to those who haven't done their own homework, who are just saying, well, this is just a bad book on Jesus. Don't listen to those people who are saying, well, he's a Muslim. No. He is a Muslim. I don't think he's a good Muslim. I mean, if you look at just his Twitter account, this is a guy who says, no, I rejected Jesus, but I follow him. Now, remember, on television, when he was on Fox, he looked really good. He looked like he was in control. In fact, the media has heralded him on putting up with such a tough interview. How he did it, it was so tough. It was so very difficult for him. I felt bad for him the whole time. And he kept his cool because, after all, he may not be a Christian because he chastised Christians. I'm a follower of Jesus, and I think even Christians will say that sometimes Christians and followers of Christians are very different things. In other words, chastising again Christians. You're not even listening and practicing what the man preached. That's what he was saying. Now, let me ask you this. If you are a big author and you're in control and you are a follower of Jesus, do you tweet these things? These are his latest tweets.
Dear Robert Spencer, stop begging for my attention. I never take you seriously. P.S. I don't think you're fat and gay. I think you're fat and stupid.
That's the lightest one.
Yeah, well, we're starting from the light ones. Then you've got, right, people can carry concealed loaded weapons into a movie theater, but not a cape. You're effing genius, aren't you? This is to just someone asking a question about gun laws. Then someone they write, I'm a fan. They write, I know you advocate political Islam, that's fine, but please understand what we have to deal with, and links to a news story. He responds, you don't know S about me. It's a good, rational professor-like...
no, it is. That's exactly how professors deal with it.
Yeah. I don't think you understand the biological function of a... it's a T word that would describe the female anatomy. Okay. Not... I don't know how specific I should get there.
No, I think
you got that? Is that good?
Yeah.
Here's an idea for you then, to someone who asks a question. Here's an idea for you then. Stop effing following me. Stop pestering me with your stupid questions if you don't like my answers.
Okay, all right.
That's a follower of
very
Jesus.
Nice.
Apparently, he was obsessed with Jesus, if you remember. Apparently, also obsessed with you, which I didn't realize. He does. Holy S, did I read this right? Glenn Beck makes $80 million a year? That's like Romney money. Man, hate sells. Ugh. Bachman staffer says she's privy to information that you and I don't have. Yeah, like how she can talk with S for brains. It's a nice, it's a pro-woman comment there. War on women is in effect, apparently. Then someone, he apparently called Osama bin Laden a great religious reformer, which is interesting. He responds, religious reformer is neither a positive or negative judgment, dumbass. Which is interesting because great seems to be a positive judgment.
Yeah, it does.
Maybe religious reformer isn't, but great, when you attach it with great, it does seem to be. So that's just a few of the wonderful ones that I could actually read.
Here's the deal. This is all up on the Blaze. You can find this story, and you need to tweet it and send it to your friends because nobody in the mainstream media will. Don't be mistaken. This guy is not. a Muslim, at least a good Muslim. This guy may be a Muslim extremist for all I know. I know he is a progressive extremist, and he is trying to change our traditions, change our history, make us question everything we know. He is trying to dismantle the Western way of life because he thinks it's a virus. And that's who he is.